Have you ever noticed how the older you get, the more people seem to think they have a right to know everything about your life? You're sitting at coffee with a new acquaintance, and suddenly they're asking about your finances, your health, your family dramas, and your deepest regrets. It feels invasive, doesn't it? Yet so many of us, in our desire to connect and be accepted, end up sharing far more than we should. We tell ourselves we're just being open and honest, but sometimes that openness comes at a steep price. The truth is, there's a profound difference between being genuinely social and oversharing in ways that can damage your peace, your relationships, and your dignity. In our later years, we face a delicate balance between building meaningful connections and protecting our inner sanctuary. You've lived long enough to accumulate stories, struggles, dreams, and disappointments that younger people haven't yet experienced. Your life is rich with complexity, but not every chapter needs to be an open book for everyone to read. The challenge isn't about becoming secretive or withdrawn, but about learning the art of thoughtful discretion. It's about understanding that your privacy is not selfishness, it's self-respect. When you guard certain aspects of your life, you're not building walls. You're creating healthy boundaries that actually allow for deeper, more authentic relationships. Think about the conversations you've had recently with new friends, neighbors, or even family members. How often have you walked away feeling exposed, vulnerable, or somehow diminished? Perhaps you shared something personal only to have it met with unwanted advice, judgment, or worse, gossip that spread beyond your control. Maybe you opened up about a health concern and suddenly found yourself the subject of everyone's pity or unsolicited medical opinions. Or you mentioned a family conflict and watched as it became fodder for community speculation. These experiences teach us that not everyone deserves access to our most sensitive truths. Your inner world is sacred territory, and you have every right to decide who gets invited in. The wisdom of knowing what to keep private isn't about hiding who you are. It's about honoring who you are. When you protect certain aspects of your life from casual scrutiny, you preserve their power and meaning. You avoid the exhaustion that comes from constantly defending, explaining, or justifying your choices to people who may not understand your journey. You sidestep the complications that arise when personal information gets twisted, misunderstood, or used against you. Most importantly, you maintain control over your own narrative. Your story belongs to you, and you have the right to share it selectively, thoughtfully, and only when you choose to do so. Today, we're going to explore the specific areas of your life that deserve this kind of thoughtful protection. Through the experiences of people who've learned these lessons, both the easy way and the hard way, you'll discover exactly what to keep close to your heart and why. You'll learn how to navigate social situations with grace while maintaining your boundaries, how to build genuine connections without compromising your privacy, and how to find that sweet spot between openness and discretion. By the end of our time together, you'll have a clear roadmap for protecting your peace while still enjoying rich, meaningful relationships. Most importantly, you'll understand that choosing privacy isn't about fear or shame. It's about wisdom, self-respect, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own worth. To help you see this more clearly, I want to tell you a story about a woman named Ellie Jennings. At 67, Ellie had recently retired from her successful career as an architect and made a bold decision to start fresh in a small coastal town. She'd left behind the familiar rhythms of city life for something quieter, more intentional. The salty air, the slower pace, and the promise of new beginnings had drawn her to this charming community where everyone seemed to know everyone else. Ellie was naturally warm and outgoing, the kind of person who could strike up a conversation with anyone, but she was also learning that her friendly nature sometimes invited more questions than she was comfortable answering. The local community center had become Ellie's second home, where she volunteered her time helping with various projects and programs. It was there that she met other retirees who, like her, were navigating this new chapter of life. Among them was Ivy Grant, a 64-year-old former nurse who had moved to town around the same time as Ellie. Ivy was enthusiastic about making connections and seemed genuinely interested in everyone's story. There was also Miles Everett, a 70-year-old former entrepreneur who had taken over the chess club and had a talent for drawing people into conversation with his charismatic personality. One particular afternoon, as the three of them took a break from organizing donated books in the center's library, Ivy turned to Ellie with curious eyes. "You know, Ellie, I've been wondering about your story," she said, settling into one of the comfortable reading chairs. "What brought you here, really? I mean, leaving everything behind to start over somewhere new, that takes courage. Was there something you were running from or toward?" Miles looked up from the chess magazine he'd been flipping through, clearly interested in Ellie's response. The question hung in the air, innocent enough on the surface, but Ellie could sense the deeper probing beneath it. Ellie smiled warmly, but something inside her hesitated. She could feel the familiar tug between her desire to connect with these new friends and an instinct to protect something precious within herself. "Oh, you know how it is," she said lightly. "Sometimes life just calls you in a new direction." But even as she deflected, she could see that both Ivy and Miles were hoping for more. If you've been there, hit that like button and subscribe for more wisdom on navigating these moments with grace. Ellie's instinct to pause before answering Ivy's probing question wasn't coincidence. It was wisdom speaking, the kind that comes from understanding that not every story needs to be shared, especially with people you're still getting to know. In the days that followed that afternoon at the community center, Ellie would face several more moments where she had to choose between openness and discretion, each one teaching her something valuable about the art of selective sharing. The following week, during their regular coffee break between volunteer shifts, the conversation turned to past challenges and how they'd shaped everyone's resilience. Ivy was sharing about her struggles with a difficult supervisor during her nursing career, and Miles was recounting some of the business setbacks he'd weathered over the years. The atmosphere was supportive, almost therapeutic, and Ellie found herself tempted to open up about her own professional struggles. She thought about the collapse of her architecture firm 15 years earlier, when a major client defaulted on payments and left her drowning in debt. The memory still carried weight, the months of sleepless nights, the humiliation of having to let go of employees she cared about, the way she'd had to rebuild her career from scratch in her 50s. "What about you, Ellie?" Miles asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. "You must have had your share of professional storms in architecture. That's not an easy field for anyone, let alone for women of our generation." Ellie felt the familiar warmth in her chest that came with being seen and acknowledged. Part of her wanted to share the whole story, to connect with these new friends through vulnerability and mutual understanding. But something held her back. She could imagine how the conversation might unfold, the well-meaning advice about financial planning, the sympathetic looks, the way this difficult chapter might become the lens through which her new friends viewed her. Instead, she chose a different path. "Architecture definitely has its ups and downs," she said with a thoughtful smile. "But I suppose that's true of any career worth pursuing. The important thing is that each challenge taught me something valuable." She left it at that, watching as the conversation naturally flowed to other topics. Later, as she walked home along the coastal path, Ellie reflected on her choice. She realized that sharing her financial struggles wouldn't have deepened her friendships. It would have changed their dynamic entirely. Her new friends might have started viewing her through the lens of that hardship, offering unsolicited financial advice or treating her with a kind of careful pity she neither wanted nor needed. This was the first thing Ellie learned to keep private: past financial struggles Not because there was any shame in having weathered difficult times, but because revealing such details often invites judgments, assumptions, and a kind of helpful interference that can diminish your autonomy. When you share financial hardships with casual acquaintances, you risk being seen as someone who needs rescuing or managing rather than as a complete person with a rich, complex history that includes both struggles and triumphs. A few days later, Ellie encountered another test of her growing wisdom about discretion. She was helping Ivy organize craft supplies when Ivy mentioned that she'd been estranged from her own daughter for several years. "Family relationships can be so complicated," Ivy said with a sigh. "Do you have any siblings, Ellie? Are you close with your family?" The question felt innocent enough, but Ellie knew it was loaded with potential complications. She thought about her sister Margaret, the bitter argument they'd had over their mother's care 3 years earlier, the way pride and old resentments had hardened into a silence that neither of them seemed able to break. Ellie had been the one, pushing for their mother to stay in her own home with hired help, while Margaret insisted on moving her to an assisted living facility. The argument had escalated beyond the practical question into deeper territory, old childhood wounds and decades of unspoken grievances. Margaret had accused Ellie of being controlling and unrealistic, while Ellie had called Margaret cold and selfish. Their mother had passed away the following year, and the sisters hadn't spoken since the funeral. The weight of that estrangement sat heavy in Ellie's chest, a constant ache she carried quietly. "I have a sister," Ellie said carefully, "but we're not in regular contact. You know how families can be. Sometimes geography and different life paths create distance." Ivy nodded sympathetically, but clearly wanted more details. "Was there a falling out?" She pressed gently. "I only ask because I'm dealing with something similar with my daughter, and it helps to know I'm not alone in these struggles." Ellie felt the pull of shared experience, the desire to connect through mutual pain, but she also sensed the danger in opening this particular door. She had learned from watching other people's family dramas become community gossip, how private conflicts could become public entertainment when shared too freely. "Family relationships are delicate things," Ellie said with a sad smile. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is give each other space and hope that time will heal what words couldn't fix." She redirected the conversation to Ivy's situation, offering support without divulging the details of her own pain. This became the second thing Ellie chose to keep private: family conflicts and estrangements. Sharing family drama with acquaintances rarely brings the comfort or resolution we hope for. Instead, it often leads to gossip, unsolicited advice, and a loss of control over your own narrative. Your family relationships are complex, shaped by decades of history that outsiders can't fully understand. When you share these conflicts broadly, you risk having your personal pain become someone else's entertainment or judgment. The third lesson in discretion came during a group discussion about health and aging. The volunteers were sharing their various strategies for staying active and healthy, and the conversation inevitably turned to the challenges they all faced. Miles mentioned his ongoing battle with high blood pressure, while Ivy talked about her struggle with insomnia since retirement. The sharing felt supportive and normalizing, and Ellie found herself considering whether to mention her arthritis. The pain in her hands and knees had been getting worse over the past year, making some of her volunteer tasks more difficult than she wanted to admit. She thought about the mornings when she had to take extra time to work the stiffness out of her joints, the way she had to plan her activities around her pain levels, the frustration of feeling like her body was betraying. Her part of her wanted to share this burden, to receive the understanding and support of her new friends. But she also remembered her mother's experience, how openly discussing her health issues had gradually changed the way people treated her. Friends and neighbors had started speaking to her mother differently, more slowly and loudly, as if poor health meant diminished intelligence. They began making decisions for her, assuming she needed help with tasks she could still manage independently. "I think the key is staying as active as we can," Ellie said instead, "and accepting that our bodies change as we age. The important thing is not letting those changes define us or limit us more than necessary." She kept her response general, supportive, but private. This restraint taught her the third principle: keeping ongoing health issues to yourself, at least in casual, social settings. Not because there's shame in illness or limitation, but because revealing health struggles often invites unwanted concern, advice, and a gradual erosion of how others perceive your independence and capability. When you share every ache and pain with your social circle, you risk being seen as fragile or needy rather than as the complete, capable person you are. Your health challenges are real and deserve attention, but they're best shared with healthcare providers, close family, and perhaps one or two trusted friends who can offer genuine support without changing the fundamental dynamic of your relationship. The fourth and final lesson from Ellie's experience came during a reflective conversation about life's missed opportunities. The group had been discussing travel, and Miles mentioned some regrets about places he'd never visited. Ivy shared her disappointment about not pursuing music more seriously when she was younger. The mood was contemplative, almost confessional, and Ellie felt herself drawn into the vulnerability of the moment. She thought about her own deepest regret, the opportunity she'd had in her 40s to spend a year in Italy working on a restoration project in Florence. The position had been offered to her just as her ex-husband was going through a career crisis, and she'd turned it down to support him and maintain stability for their children. The marriage had ended in divorce anyway, 5 years later, and Ellie had never gotten another opportunity like that one. She often wondered how different her life might have been if she'd taken that leap, followed that dream, trusted herself enough to choose her own path. The regret sat deep in her heart, not because she blamed herself for the choice she'd made, but because she grieved for the woman she might have become. "What about you, Ellie?" Ivy asked. "Is there something you wish you'd done differently? Somewhere you wish you'd gone?" The question was asked with such genuine care that Ellie almost answered honestly. But something made her pause, made her consider what sharing this particular regret might cost her. She realized that revealing her deepest disappointments wouldn't bring comfort or connection. It would only invite others to judge her choices, offer meaningless reassurances, or worse, express pity for opportunities lost. "I think we all have moments we wonder about," she said thoughtfully. "But I've learned that dwelling on what might have been keeps us from appreciating what is. I'm grateful for the path I took, even with its unexpected turns." This became her fourth principle of privacy: keeping unfulfilled personal regrets to yourself. Not because regret is shameful, but because sharing your deepest disappointments with casual acquaintances often invites judgment, pity, or hollow comfort, rather than genuine understanding. Your regrets are part of your inner landscape, shaped by choices made in specific circumstances that others can't fully comprehend. When you broadcast these disappointments, you risk having others minimize your pain, question your decisions, or treat you as someone to be pitied rather than respected. Some sorrows are meant to be carried quietly, processed privately, and perhaps shared only with those who truly understand the weight of such choices. As the weeks passed at the community center, Ellie continued to build genuine, warm relationships with Ivy, Miles, and others in her new community. But she did so while maintaining clear boundaries around these 4 sensitive areas of her life. Her discretion didn't make her cold or distant. It made her mysterious in the best sense. Someone with depth and dignity who shared herself thoughtfully and selectively. People respected her more, not less, for her ability to be present and engaged without being an open book. Ellie's story illustrates something profound about the nature of authentic connection in our later years. True intimacy isn't about sharing everything. It's about sharing the right things with the right people at the right time. When we protect certain aspects of our inner world, we preserve our dignity and maintain control over our own narrative. We avoid the exhaustion that comes from constantly defending our choices, the complications that arise from oversharing, and the loss of mystery that makes relationships interesting and respectful. The wisdom Ellie discovered through these experiences wasn't about becoming secretive or withdrawn. It was about understanding that privacy is a form of self-respect. When you choose what to share and what to keep sacred, you honor both yourself and your relationships. You create space for genuine connection without sacrificing your autonomy or dignity. If you're finding value in these insights, subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on navigating relationships with grace and intention. While Ellie was learning the art of selective sharing in her coastal community, another story was unfolding in a different part of the country that perfectly illustrates the remaining principles of thoughtful privacy. Let me share another story that shows what I mean about protecting the deeper aspects of your inner world. Sam Whitaker, at 72, had found his rhythm in the simple pleasures of daily life. Each morning, you could find him in the town park, settled on his favorite wooden bench beneath an old oak tree, a worn notebook in his lap, and a pen moving steadily across the pages. Sam was a widower of 5 years, a man who had discovered that poetry could capture what regular conversation often missed. His gentle demeanor and thoughtful presence had made him something of a fixture in the park, the kind of person others naturally gravitated toward when they needed a listening ear or a moment of peaceful company. The park itself was a microcosm of the community, a place where people from all walks of life intersected during their daily routines. There was the morning jogger crowd, the dog walkers, the parents with young children, and the growing number of retirees who, like Sam, had claimed certain benches as their informal offices for reading, writing, or simply watching the world go by. Sam enjoyed the gentle social rhythm of this space, the way conversations could bloom naturally and end just as gracefully, without the pressure or expectations that sometimes came with more formal social settings. On this particular afternoon, a young man named David, probably in his early 30s, approached Sam's bench. David was someone Sam had noticed before, a regular park visitor who often seemed agitated, always on his phone arguing about politics or current events. Today, David seemed especially wound up, pacing back and forth near Sam's bench before finally settling on the adjacent bench. "Can you believe what's happening in Washington these days?" David said, clearly addressing Sam. "I mean, the whole system is just completely broken. These politicians don't represent anyone but themselves and their corporate donors. What do you think, sir? You've lived through enough administrations to know when things are really falling apart, right?" David's energy was intense, his need for validation and agreement almost palpable. Sam looked up from his notebook, where he'd been working on a poem about the changing seasons, and offered a gentle smile. Sam had strong political opinions, shaped by decades of watching elections, policy changes, and social movements. He'd voted in every election since he turned 18, had served on local committees, and had watched his community change through various political cycles. He had deep concerns about current events and definite thoughts about the direction the country was heading, but he'd also learned something valuable over the years about the futility of political arguments, especially with people he barely knew. "Politics certainly can be frustrating," Sam said mildly, returning his attention to his notebook. "Though I've found that most of the real changes in life happen in quieter ways, person to person, day by day." David seemed unsatisfied with this response, clearly hoping for more engagement, more fuel for his political fire. "But surely you have strong feelings about what's happening. I mean, at your age, you must be worried about the future we're leaving for the next generation." Sam felt the familiar tug of wanting to engage, to share his thoughts and concerns, but he'd witnessed too many friendships damaged by political disagreements, too many peaceful spaces turned hostile by ideological debates. "I think every generation worries about the one that follows," he said thoughtfully. "The best thing I can do is try to be a good neighbor and citizen in whatever small ways I can manage." This became Sam's first lesson in the art of privacy, keeping personal political views to yourself in casual social settings. This wasn't about being apathetic or uninformed, but about recognizing that political discussions with acquaintances rarely change minds and often damage relationships. Your political beliefs are deeply personal, shaped by your experiences, values, and hopes for the future. When you share them indiscriminately, you risk being labeled, dismissed, or drawn into arguments that leave everyone feeling frustrated and divided. Sam understood that his influence was better exercised through his actions, his kindness, and his example, rather than through political debates with strangers. The following week brought another test of Sam's wisdom about selective sharing. An elderly woman named Rose, who often fed the pigeons near Sam's bench, had noticed the Bible that Sam sometimes kept beside his notebook. Rose herself was clearly religious, often making references to prayer and faith in their casual conversations. On this particular day, she decided to ask Sam directly about his beliefs. "I've noticed you reading the good book sometimes," Rose said, settling onto the bench beside him. "It's so wonderful to meet another person of faith in these secular times. What denomination are you, if you don't mind me asking?" "I'm Baptist myself, been going to the same church for 40 years. There's nothing like a strong church community to keep you grounded, don't you think?" Rose's enthusiasm was genuine and heartfelt, and Sam could see that she was hoping to find a kindred spirit, perhaps even recruit him for her church activities. Sam's relationship with faith was complex and deeply personal. He'd grown up in a strict religious household, had questioned and struggled with his beliefs as a young man, and had eventually found his way to a quiet, contemplative spirituality that didn't fit neatly into any particular denomination. He attended services occasionally at different churches, finding value in the ritual and community without committing to any specific doctrine. His faith was more about personal reflection, about finding meaning in small moments, about feeling connected to something larger than himself through his poetry and his observations of the natural world. "Faith is such a personal journey," Sam said gently, closing his Bible and placing it carefully in his bag. "I find inspiration in many places, and I'm grateful for anyone who finds comfort and community in their beliefs." Rose pressed a little, further clearly hoping for more specifics. "But surely you have a church home. A man of your character must have strong religious convictions. What draws you to Scripture?" Sam could have shared his theological struggles, his questions about organized religion, his complicated relationship with the faith of his childhood. He could have explained his more universalist approach to spirituality, his belief that truth could be found in many traditions, but he'd learned that religious discussions, like political ones, often led to misunderstanding and judgment rather than genuine connection. "I find comfort in the wisdom traditions," he said simply. "There's so much beauty in the search for meaning, regardless of where that search leads us." This became Sam's second principle of privacy, keeping religious convictions and spiritual struggles to yourself in casual social settings. Not because faith should be hidden, but because deeply personal beliefs are often too complex and nuanced to be shared safely with acquaintances who might judge, proselytize, or misunderstand your journey. Your spiritual life is sacred territory, shaped by experiences, questions, and revelations that others may not be equipped to understand or respect. When you share these beliefs indiscriminately, you risk having them trivialized, challenged, or used as ammunition in debates you never wanted to have. Sam's quiet approach to faith allowed him to maintain his spiritual dignity while respecting Others, different paths. A few days later, Sam encountered his third lesson in the importance of discretion. A neighbor from his apartment building, a man named Frank, who often walked his dog through the park, struck up a conversation about retirement planning and estate matters. Frank had clearly been dealing with some family drama around inheritance issues and seemed to want to use Sam as a sounding board for his frustrations. "You know what really gets me, Sam?" Frank said, his dog sniffing around the base of Sam's oak tree. "My kids are already asking questions about what I plan to do with the house, like they're just waiting for me to die so they can cash in. Have you had to deal with that kind of thing? I mean, you seem like you've got your affairs in order. How do you handle those conversations with family?" Sam had indeed spent considerable time thinking about his estate planning. His modest house, his small savings account, his carefully curated collection of books, and his late wife's jewelry all needed to be accounted for. He'd had difficult conversations with his adult children about his wishes, had updated his will recently, and had made decisions about what would go where. But he'd also learned that discussing financial planning and estate details, even in general terms, could create expectations, assumptions, and complications he didn't want to navigate. "It's important to have everything organized," Sam said carefully. "But I think those conversations are best kept between family members and the appropriate professionals." Frank seemed frustrated by Sam's reluctance to engage more specifically. "But surely you have thoughts about how to handle pushy family members. I mean, don't you think kids these days have unrealistic expectations about inheritance?" Sam could have shared his own strategies, his approach to family financial discussions, his thoughts about intergenerational wealth transfer. But he recognized that sharing such details, even with seemingly innocent intent, could lead to gossip, assumptions about his financial situation, or unwanted advice about his personal affairs. This became Sam's third principle: keeping estate and financial planning details private. Not because there's shame in planning ahead, but because financial information, even when shared with good intentions, often leads to assumptions, expectations, and complications that can damage relationships and compromise your privacy. Your financial affairs are nobody's business but your own and those you specifically choose to involve. The fourth test of Sam's wisdom came when he was inadvertently drawn into community gossip. Two regular park visitors, women named Helen and Margaret, had been having an ongoing dispute about the management of a local charity organization. Their conflict had been playing out in public spaces for weeks, and on this particular day, they seemed determined to pull Sam into their drama. "Sam, you're always so wise about these things," Helen said, approaching his bench with Margaret in tow. "Maybe you can help us settle this disagreement. Margaret thinks I was out of line when I questioned the charity's spending at the last board meeting, but I think transparency is important. What do you think? Should board members be able to ask tough questions about how donations are being used?" Sam could see immediately that this wasn't really a question about organizational governance. It was an attempt to recruit him as an ally in a personal conflict. Both women were looking at him expectantly, clearly hoping he would validate their respective positions. Sam had actually observed this conflict from a distance and had his own thoughts about both women's behavior, but he also understood that inserting himself into their drama would only complicate his peaceful park experience. "I think most disagreements work themselves out better when the people involved talk directly to each other," Sam said diplomatically. "Board dynamics can be complicated, and I'm sure you're both trying to do what's best for the organization." Neither woman seemed satisfied with his neutral response, and Margaret tried another approach. "But Sam, you must have an opinion. Helen has been spreading stories about the charity's finances all over town, making accusations without proof. Don't you think that's harmful to the organization's reputation?" Now Sam was being asked to take sides, to judge Helen's actions and validate Margaret's complaints. The pressure was subtle but real, and he could feel how easy it would be to get pulled into their conflict. Community organizations thrive when people assume good intentions, he said gently. I'm sure this will work itself out. This became Sam's fourth principle of privacy, refusing to engage with or contribute to community gossip and personal conflicts. Not because such issues don't matter, but because inserting yourself into other people's drama rarely helps and often creates unnecessary complications in your own life. When you comment on community conflicts, share opinions about others' personal business, or take sides in disputes that don't directly concern you, you risk being drawn into ongoing drama, having your words misrepresented, or damaging relationships with people on both sides of the conflict. Sam's policy of staying neutral allowed him to maintain friendships with various community members without becoming entangled in their personal disputes. The final lesson in Sam's journey toward thoughtful privacy came during a conversation about future plans and personal aspirations. A young woman named Sarah, who often brought her lunch to eat in the park, had struck up a friendship with Sam over their shared love of reading. On this particular day, she was talking about her own dreams and goals, and she turned the conversation to Sam's future plans. You're such an interesting person, Sam, Sarah said, settling on the grass near his bench with her sandwich. Do you have any big plans or projects you're working on? I mean, retirement gives you so much freedom to pursue new interests. Are there things you've always wanted to try? Sam thought about his poetry notebook, about the collection of verses he'd been quietly compiling. He'd been toying with the idea of trying to publish a small volume, maybe just a local printing, something to leave behind as a record of his observations and reflections. But he'd also learned to be cautious about sharing dreams and aspirations before they were fully formed and ready to withstand outside scrutiny. He'd seen too many people discouraged by well-meaning friends who offered premature advice, questioned the feasibility of their dreams, or inadvertently diminished their enthusiasm. With misplaced concern or skepticism, I'm content with the simple pleasures, Sam said with a smile. Reading, writing in my journal, enjoying conversations like this one. I've learned that happiness often comes from appreciating what you already have, rather than always reaching for something more. This became Sam's fifth and final principle, keeping new ambitions and dreams private until they're ready to be shared. Not because dreams are shameful, but because aspirations in their early stages are fragile and need protection from outside judgment, advice, and skepticism. When you share your dreams too early or too widely, you risk having them criticized, diminished, or contaminated by others' doubts and limitations. Your aspirations deserve to be nurtured in private until they're strong enough to withstand the scrutiny that comes with public sharing. As the months passed, Sam continued to enjoy his daily park routine, building genuine connections with various community members while maintaining clear boundaries around these 5 sensitive areas of his life. His discretion didn't make him antisocial or secretive. It made him a trusted figure in the community, someone people respected precisely because he didn't engage in gossip, political arguments, or oversharing. People felt safe talking to Sam because they knew he wouldn't judge them or spread their business around the community. Sam's approach to privacy illustrates something profound about maintaining dignity and peace in our later years. True wisdom involves understanding that not every thought needs to be shared, not every opinion needs to be voiced, and not every aspect of your inner world needs to be made public. When you protect certain areas of your life from casual scrutiny, you preserve their power and meaning while maintaining control over your own narrative. The 5 principles Sam embodied, keeping political views, religious beliefs, financial details, community gossip, and personal dreams private, allowed him to navigate social situations with grace while preserving his autonomy and dignity. His selective sharing created space for authentic connection without sacrificing his privacy or becoming entangled in unnecessary drama. If you're finding these insights helpful, hit that like button to let me know this content resonates with you. Through Ellie's thoughtful discretion at the community center and Sam's quiet wisdom in the park, we've witnessed the profound power of selective sharing. These two individuals, navigating their golden years in different settings but with similar wisdom, have shown us exactly what aspects of our lives deserve protection from casual scrutiny. Their experiences illuminate 9 specific areas that seniors should consider keeping private to maintain their dignity, peace, and authentic relationships. The 9 things you should never reveal to others aren't secrets born of shame, but treasures worth protecting. First, your past financial struggles deserve privacy because sharing them often invites unnecessary judgments, pity, or unwanted advice that can diminish how others perceive your capability and independence. Second, family conflicts and estrangements should remain private because broadcasting these painful dynamics rarely brings healing and often turns your personal pain into community gossip. Third, ongoing health issues are best kept between you and your healthcare providers because sharing every ache and limitation can gradually erode how others see your independence and vitality. Fourth, unfulfilled personal regrets should be processed privately because sharing your deepest disappointments with casual acquaintances invites hollow comfort, judgment about your past choices, or pity rather than genuine understanding. Fifth, your personal political views should be kept to yourself in most social settings because political discussions with acquaintances rarely change minds and often damage relationships unnecessarily. Sixth, your religious convictions and spiritual struggles deserve protection because deeply personal beliefs are often too complex and nuanced to be shared safely with people who might judge or misunderstand your journey. Seventh, estate and financial planning details should remain private because discussing your financial affairs, even with good intentions, often creates expectations, assumptions, and complications that can damage relationships and compromise your privacy. Eighth, opinions on community gossip should be avoided because inserting yourself into other people's drama rarely helps and often creates unnecessary complications in your own life. Ninth, new ambitions and dreams should be nurtured privately until they're strong enough to withstand outside scrutiny, because aspirations in their early stages need protection from well-meaning but potentially discouraging advice or skepticism. These 9 principles aren't about becoming secretive or withdrawn. They're about understanding that privacy is a form of self-respect, that boundaries create space for authentic connection, and that not every aspect of your inner world needs to be shared with everyone who asks. Ellie and Sam both maintained warm, genuine relationships while protecting these sensitive areas of their lives. Their discretion didn't make them cold or distant. It made them respected members of their communities who others trusted precisely because they knew how to keep confidences and maintain appropriate boundaries. The wisdom of selective sharing becomes even more important as we age because our lives have accumulated complexity, depth, and sensitive experiences that younger people may not understand. You've weathered storms, made difficult choices, and learned hard lessons that have shaped who you are today. Not everyone deserves access to those profound experiences, and sharing them indiscriminately can diminish their meaning and power in your life. Think about your own social circles and recent conversations. How often have you walked away from interactions feeling exposed, judged, or somehow diminished because you shared more than you should have? How many times have you seen your personal information become the subject of gossip, unsolicited advice, or assumptions that made you uncomfortable? These experiences are teaching you the same lessons that Ellie and Sam learned through their thoughtful approach to privacy. The beauty of implementing these 9 principles is that they don't require you to change who you are fundamentally. You can still be warm, engaging, and socially connected while maintaining healthy boundaries around these sensitive areas. You can build meaningful relationships without turning yourself into an open book for everyone to read. You can connect authentically with others while preserving the sacred spaces within yourself that deserve protection. As you move forward from this moment, consider how you want to apply these lessons in your own life. Which of these 9 areas have you been sharing too freely? What boundaries do you need to establish to protect your peace and dignity? How can you maintain your naturally social nature while becoming more selective about what you reveal and to whom? The goal isn't to become guarded or suspicious, but to become wise about the difference between appropriate openness and harmful oversharing. Your later years should be a time of peace, dignity, and authentic connection. By protecting these 9 sensitive areas of your life, you're not hiding who you are, you're honoring who you are. You're creating space for relationships built on mutual respect rather than shared drama or inappropriate intimacy. You're maintaining control over your own narrative while still enjoying the warmth and connection that make life meaningful. The choice is yours. You can continue sharing everything with everyone, risking your privacy and peace, or you can embrace the wisdom of selective discretion that Ellie and Sam have modeled for us. You can protect what deserves protection while still living fully and connecting authentically with the people who matter most in your life. If this message has inspired you to think differently about privacy and relationships, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on navigating life's challenges with grace and dignity.